What's going on, everyone? I'm Mace. Welcome to the channel. So right now I'm talking about one of my favorite movies of all time, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Now, what makes this movie work so well? It's not just the typical fashion of Kubrick to have immaculate cinematography in his films. It's not the source material that he was basing this film off of. It's not the soundtrack. It's Kubrick's mind, basically. Kubrick was a very, very interested mind. He liked to study things. He liked to discuss things. He liked to analyze the human condition, human behavior, psychology, everything. The reasons why things happen, like the most essential questions, is what he was always interested in, and you can see this throughout his films, from Passive Glory. Should you follow your leaders blindly, even if it's going to result in things that aren't ethical in your book? Are you going to just follow your leaders' plans, even if they're genocidal or even if they're crazy? An interesting part of human condition. And then he came out with Dr. Strangelove, which was a fantastic satire, just very comedic. Peter Sellers is absolutely brilliant. Man, oh man, that movie is just it's so good. If you can handle the okay, I might need to turn this down a little bit. Sorry. Anyways, where was I? I think I was talking about General Jack D. Ripper and his counterpart, played by George C. Scott, who was so amazing in Doctor Strangelove. And then he moves on to Lolita, another very, very risque film topic to attempt to analyze at that time, 1964. Like that's a risque time to be talking about sort of pedophilia and relationships where the man is 46 and the girl, is like 13, or I think she's 13 or 14 in the story. So let's just say risque topic. And then we get to 1968, and he changes film forever. He releases 2001: A Space Odyssey, one of the most amazing films of all time. One of my favorite films. I love that film. Like, people always ask me, like, how can you like this? It's so boring. And I'm just like, the cinematography, the marriage of score and visual images is just incredible. It's one of my favorite films. The sequence in the first act where, like, the spaceship is just the coming through the air, and then the music, the waltz, Blue Danube, and the way that big spinning spaceship, and just the way everything comes together. It's just such a dance between spaceships. It's absolutely incredible. It's mind-bogglingly ahead of its time. It's beautiful. I love Stanley Kubrick. If not for all his movies, for that one scene itself, it is amazing. I love it. And then what does he do? He comes out with A Clockwork Orange. 180-degree turn from the implications and questions that he brung with 2001: A Space Odyssey. This was more of a on the ground movie in terms of its social sort of messages. This was about how brutal and psychotic man can be, how cruel and insane and bad they can be, while at the same time holding these civil sort of obsessions and being people. Like, how do you reconcile the fact that some people can do this incredible violence but still enjoy Beethoven's symphonies, or enjoy the company of a pet snake? It's about the unquenched nature of the psychopath and sort of how they reconcile being a psychopath with also still being a person and living with yourself, or living, with a psychopath in your mind. So that's always an interesting thing to pontificate on. But it's also a very interesting setting, especially for when Kubrick came out with this movie, 1971. It's very apocalyptic. It's very run down. It's surreal in many senses, authoritarian, has tinges of 1984. There's this weird language they speak and this weird lexicon of words they've developed their own little lexicon of words, and their nomenclature is very like odd and strange. Like vidi for videos, and the Krover milk bar where they're drinking this milk that has like some sort of effect as a drug. What else? Ultra violence, a little the old in out. Like, I can see why this film was banned in the United Kingdom when it came out in 1971, which is crazy, which is why I'm always against censorship, because all we need is people who are sensible and reasonable and civil and aren't going to attack you, but understand that ideas have to be talked about. They have to be talked about from 360 degrees. They have to be talked about. Like, you can't just shove them under the rug and then like expect people to go about their days, because people are very inquisitive and they're curious about life and the world, and they want to understand why bad people are bad, and to to blanket and try to suffocate speech is one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard, because it's better to know somebody's a racist than to try to think if they're racist or try to guess if they're racist. It's better to know what they think. If they're psychopathic, racist, sexist, you know what? It's better for them to be able to speak their mind so we can evaluate them and therefore ridicule them is always better, in my opinion. So, what did Kubrick do after Clockwork Orange? What did he do? He came with Barry Lyndon. Oh, man. It took me you know what? You really have to appreciate Kubrick. This is like the Kubrick appreciation movie. Like, the cinematography, the detail, oh my god, it's so amazing. And there's a lot of imagery and metaphor within the story of Barry Lyndon, because he's an Irishman who assumes the position of an Englishman when it comes to power, and uses this. He manipulates people, and he gets on people's good sides. He joins the side that is most prosperous for him. Like, very interesting movie. The cinematography and the costume design is out of this world. It's absolutely amazing. Man, you need to go watch this movie. Barry Lyndon, like, some of the zoom shots are absolutely spectacular. Oh my god, the cinematography, like, it makes me want to go watch it if it wasn't 3.5 hours long. One of the initial tracking shots of the army, the marching towards the camera, and just the social customs of the time, and bringing everything into that. And he's in a relationship with his cousin in the very, very first scene of the film. Just amazing stuff. What does he do next? The Shining. One of my favorite films of all time. You have Jack Nicholson. You have amazing tracking shots. You have amazing analysis and examination of the human psychosis and horror movies. It's all like just amazing stuff. There's no jump cuts. There's just creepiness and sinister ideas, like the twins and the blood coming down the elevator. It's all just so scary, just crazy. And the transition of Jack Nicholson to, like, your loving husband, even though you can see signs of psychosis right from the start, his transition from loving husband into psychopathic murderous killer is amazing. Just Scatman Crothers is in this movie. It has amazing performances. Even I'm blanking on her name right now. The actress that played Wendy, like, she was kind of ruined by this movie. I think she was typecast after this, but in retrospect, she did a fantastic job, in my opinion. So, anyways, what was I talking about? I was talking about The Clockwork Orange. Yeah, the combination of music and film. Even though Kubrick had mastered this in 2001, A Space Odyssey, the combination and the use of classical music and music in general to sort of add to the atmosphere or just combine in such an amazing fashion with the visual image to create just amazing scenes. We saw it in 2001 so many times. Like he definitely revolutionized and pioneered this technique of using sort of classical pieces in interesting ways, and it's frankly, that's one reason out of like a ton of why Kubrick's, I think, my favorite filmmaker of all time. So, The Clockwork Orange, Malcolm McDowell as such a youngin. I've actually read the novel. It's very interesting. If you've never read the novel, I'd read it. It's written in the vernacular of the time of the setting of the novel, so that's kind of interesting. So it has like all these weird phrases, and their speech is much different than ours. So it's a bit hard to get through that way. But when you get past it, it's down to the main point. Like, as much as you try to brainwash somebody to be a certain way, they're not going to be that way, because that's not them. Like, human nature doesn't work like that. So they try to, in the third act of the film, they try to prop open Alex's eyes and try to get him to become sick. Like this is what they do. They try to make him become sick at the sight of violence, at the sight of sexual violence. So, and yeah, it's just craziness. And they have this sort of contraption to hold his eyes open, so he has to look at the screen. And it's an iconic image, obviously, because it's not on the cover of that album, but it's on the cover of many of the promotional images. Like, you'll see Malcolm McDowell, and they have these things opening up his eyes. And I believe actually Malcolm McDowell's eyeballs, or his retinas, were scratched by the little metal pieces they had on there. But obviously you can still see, and he was a little bit overshadowed by this role, I feel, for a while. Although he's always stayed in the spotlight and been in many films, he's never sort of, whenever I ever see him, I was like, Malcolm McDowell, Alex the Large. Yeah, and the depiction of violence for the time, and anarchy, and sort of these hooligans to extreme extent were terrorizing this apocalyptic vision of the future in England. And then when they beat up the old man at the beginning, and then retribution is to be had near the end of the film, when the group of the old people, they find Alex, and he's left defenseless because he has no way to defend himself as his sickness to violence ensues, and he feels like he has to puke, but he can't puke, and it's agonizing, and all these people are beating him because of his prior actions. It's really, really well done, and yeah, very thought-provoking film, very, very thought-provoking film. One of the best films of all time, in my estimation. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed my review. This was a little bit different from my videos. If you enjoy movie reviews, or sort of analyses, or ruminations, or discussions, or whatever you want to call it, you call it what you want. But if you like seeing them, yeah, let me know. I'll keep doing it. Oops. Anyways, peace. Apparently, palm out peace is like a derogatory, or an adversarial and insult in some languages or cultures. But apparently the palm in is always unanimously about peace. So I don't know the answer. I don't have all the answers. I can go like this, though. I know what that means. Everybody knows what that means. But yeah, anyways, we can do Spock. Live long and prosper. We'll see you all later. Whoa, what happened here? Did I exit this? Nope, not yet. Anyways, see y'all later.